Jiu-Jitsu is my passion, and I think is my purpose of life. And if you think like, oh, I know everything, no, you don't know.
For nearly 2 decades, there was one name that seemed impossible to escape in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu: Andre Galvao. Six-time BJJ World Champion and ADCC World Champion, and the academy founder of one of the most successful grappling academies on earth. If you were building the perfect jiu-jitsu career, it would probably look a lot like Andre Galvao's. He won everything, built champions, and created an empire. And for years, it seemed like nothing could stop him. Not rivals, not age, not changing generations, not even the rise of athletes who would eventually surpass him. But sometimes the hardest thing to survive isn't losing its success. Because while Galvao was building one of the most powerful brands in combat sports, cracks were quietly forming underneath the surface. This isn't just the story of one of the greatest grapplers who ever lived. It's the story of what happens when a man spends his entire life climbing to the top and discovers staying there is much harder than getting there.
And then I felt like I went to a trap, I would say, right?
Long before he became a legend, Andre Galvao was just a kid growing up in Brazil. Born in São Paulo in 1982, and like many Brazilian grapplers of his generation, Jiu-Jitsu wasn't a business opportunity. It was survival.
The man to beat at brown belt was unquestionably Andre Galvao. The protege of Fernando Tereré, who was originally from São Paulo, Galvao had one of the most complete and entertaining styles in the sport.
Almost immediately after touching the mats, he became obsessed. While other kids played sports casually, Andre approached training like a profession. Hours on the mats, constant competition, a willingness to push himself further than everyone around him. By the early 2000s, that obsession was paying off. He emerged as one of the brightest prospects in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, winning major tournaments, collecting medals, building a reputation as somebody who wasn't just talented, but relentless. Then came his breakthrough, training under Fernando Augusto, one of the greatest BJJ competitors to ever compete. Galvao became one of the standout athletes of the famed Brasa team. And suddenly, he wasn't just winning, he was dominating. World titles followed, international recognition, and before long, Andre Galvao was becoming one of the most respected competitors in the sport. But he wasn't satisfied with being great. He wanted to become unforgettable.
Jiu-Jitsu is my passion, and I think is my purpose of life. My name is Andre Galvao. I train Jiu-Jitsu for almost 30 years. I'm 15-time world champion, all in the black belt division.
In the late 2000s and early 2010s, it became the Andre Galvao era. IBJJF World Championships, ADCC gold medals, super fight victories. No matter the rule set, Galvao found ways to win. And what made him different wasn't just the results. It was how complete he was. Elite wrestling, elite passing, elite submissions, elite conditioning. There were very few weaknesses to attack. By 2011, Galvao had accomplished something few athletes ever come close to achieving. He wasn't just one of the best competitors alive. He was being discussed among the greatest ever. Then, he made a decision that would change the entire sport. Instead of simply competing, he started building something, a team, a culture, a movement. That movement became Atos Jiu-Jitsu. At first, it was just another academy, but eventually it became a factory.
I have great students, high-level guys, and I like to help people. I like to show what I love to others so they can love that as well.
A place that consistently produced world champions and future stars. Athletes from around the globe relocated just to train there. And as Atos grew, so did Andre's influence. He wasn't just winning anymore, he was helping create winners. And that's when his career entered another level entirely, because now he wasn't building a legacy, he was building an empire. Atos wasn't just successful, it became one of the most dominant teams in grappling history. Athletes like Kenan Duarte, Lucas Barbosa, and dozens of world champions emerged from the system. Every major tournament felt like an Atos showcase, and Andre sat at the center of all of it. Coach, leader, mentor, visionary. At the same time, he remained competitive himself. Even as younger generations emerged, Galvao continued proving he belonged among the elite. Then came one of the most famous moments of his entire career, his rivalry with Gordon Ryan. The old guard versus the new guard. The established legend against the rising superstar.
People will say that if Andre were to beat me, that he's the greatest no-gi grappler of all time. I still have a ton more time to just blow every one of his records out of the water, which the only record he has on me now is total ADCC wins, because I just haven't competed at ADCC that much.
I am capable to break my own record and come back with the 7th title.
For years, fans demanded the match. For years, both men traded words. It became one of grappling's biggest storylines. And while Andre initially resisted giving Gordon the match he wanted, many believed he was simply protecting his legacy. But eventually, there was nowhere left to run. Finally, in 2022, it happened. The ADCC super fight the world was waiting for. Years of trash talk, years of anticipation, years of debate, all culminating to this one moment. And for Andre Galvao, it was the biggest match of his life. Not because of the title on the line, but because of what it represented. This wasn't just another opponent. This was the future of the sport standing across from him. Early on, Galvao looked dangerous. He pushed the pace and tried to pressure Gordon. But as the match continued, something became obvious. Ryan wasn't intimidated. He wasn't overwhelmed by the moment like so many others before him. He looked comfortable, patient, in control. The exact same way Andre had looked against previous generations before him. And then it happened. Ryan took his back, locked in the choke, and submitted Andre Galvao. Just like that, it was over. Gordon Ryan didn't just win, he dominated. And suddenly, people began asking questions they never asked before. Was the sport moving past Andre Galvao? Had the next generation finally arrived? The answer seemed obvious. But the problems ahead weren't coming from competition. They were coming from inside the empire itself. For years, Atos looked untouchable, but then the departures started. Some athletes left quietly, while members Josh Hinger, JT Torres, and others left publicly amid the sexual assault allegations.
When the first credible voice speaks, others follow. Not because they were waiting to pile on, because they finally had a word for something they had been carrying alone.
Former students began opening their own gyms, building competing teams, and creating competing brands. But over time, more questions began emerging about the culture surrounding elite grappling. And in early 2026, everything changed. Former Atos athlete Alexa Hurst publicly accused Galvao of inappropriate conduct and sexual misconduct during training, and stated she had filed a report with law enforcement.
She was an Atos lifer who had spent most of her childhood on the team's mats. In her own words, Andre Galvao was a man she once looked up to as a hero and a father figure. He was the professor who had promoted her to gray belt when she was just a kid. This long personal history makes her public statement all the more devastating. On February 1st, 2026, Alexa Hurst posted a detailed multi-slide statement on social media announcing she was leaving Atos and describing a pattern of alleged abuse. She outlined a 6-month period of escalating misconduct with specific and disturbing claims. She alleged that Galvao touched her inappropriately during training and made repeated unwanted comments about her body.
Galvao publicly denied the allegations and said he would pursue legal action to defend his reputation. As of now, no criminal conviction or court ruling has established the claims. But that didn't stop the jiu-jitsu community from banding together, using their platform and speaking out against abuse within the grappling world, including another one of Galvao's students.
The jiu-jitsu community has banded together in response, including Adele Fornerino, who at Polaris put on an offensive masterclass where she had Selma Vic in a blender with upper and lower body threats back and forth before sliding onto the back and putting on the squeeze for a second round finish. She took the mic after wearing a shirt that said, "We don't roll like that, things need to change," to voice her thoughts on the issues facing the vulnerable athletes in the sport of jiu-jitsu that are being preyed on by people in positions of power.
Almost overnight, the conversation around Andre Galvao shifted. People weren't talking about championships anymore. They were talking about allegations, and whether the culture surrounding some of grappling's biggest teams had gone unchecked for too long. The fallout was immediate.
Some serious allegations coming out of the jiu-jitsu world as former Strikeforce fighter Andre Galvao, you can read the story here on Bloody Elbow, accused of sexual misconduct.
Several athletes, coaches, and affiliate gyms publicly distanced themselves from Atos. Some longtime members left entirely. Others removed the Atos name from their academies.
Just an entire community quietly realizing that the silence had gone on long enough.
Even organizations within the sport issued statements emphasizing athlete safety and professional conduct. For the first time in his career, Andre Galvao wasn't defending a title. He was defending his reputation, and that's what made this situation different. You can recover from a loss. You can recover from getting submitted. But allegations like these create something much harder to overcome.
And my wife and I have always prioritized the safety and the well-being of every single student who walks through the door of this gym, okay? And I remain committed to listen, to improving, and to ensure that our academy continues to be a place where students, especially children and families, feel safe, protected, and respected, okay?
While Atos remained successful, it no longer felt invincible. For the first time in years, people weren't talking about what Andre had built. They were talking about whether he could hold it together. This is the part most sports stories leave out. Nobody teaches you what happens after you've already won. Andre Galvao spent decades chasing greatness. Then, one day, he had it. The titles, the respect, the academy, everything. But the moment the allegations surfaced, people began looking back at his career through a completely different lens. And eventually, Andre found himself in a position few athletes ever reach. He wasn't being judged against his peers anymore. He was being judged against his own legacy. That's a battle almost nobody wins, because eventually, every empire shrinks. Every generation changes, not because they failed, because time always wins.
And I feel like all this, like that was happening, pandemic and all, like the pandemic came and stress and, all this like happening at the same time, drove me to this like dark side,
Former students, former teammates, everyone suddenly had an opinion, and whether those opinions were fair or unfair almost didn't matter, because perception had become reality. For years, Atos represented excellence. Now people were debating accountability. Andre was viewed as one of the sport's most respected figures. Now his name carried questions that didn't exist before. And that's what makes this chapter of his story so difficult, because Andre Galvao didn't lose a championship. He lost certainty. The certainty that his legacy was already written. The certainty that his accomplishments would always be the first thing people mentioned. The certainty that the empire he built would remain untouched. And for someone who spent decades building one of the most respected reputations in grappling, that might be the hardest loss of all.
It's endless. Like I said, Jiu-Jitsu it's evolving. It doesn't stop. And I think if you think like, oh, I know everything, no, you don't know. So if you don't surprise your opponent with something new, it's gonna be hard for you to win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times,
For most athletes, the climb is the hard part. For Andre Galvao, the fall was harder. He conquered grappling, world titles, ADCC gold, an empire of champions built from nothing. But empires built that fast carry a hidden cost. The bigger the legacy, the more there is to lose. Today, his story sits in a strange place. Part legend, part cautionary tale, part unfinished chapter. His impact is undeniable. So are the questions now attached to his name. Maybe that's the real story here. Not how he built an empire, but what happens when even empires fall.